Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Sandy Smith, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer Class 1 Virginia Morris. We warmly welcome the family of Private Ernest Victor Ryder, who are watching the live stream of this evening's ceremony. His story will be told shortly. We also warmly welcome one recruit training unit from the Royal Australian Air Force Base in Wagga Wagga, New South Wales. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by a representative for the family and visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's first World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Ernest Victor Ryder. Ernest Ryder was born on the 13th of April 1919 in the Melbourne suburb of Prahran. Known as Ernie, he was the only child of Henry and Irene Ryder. When the Second World War broke out in 1939, Ernie was working as a packer in Melbourne. Ernie Ryder married Edna May Nagel in Melbourne on the 14th of March 1941. 3 days later, he enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force. Leaving behind his new bride, Ryder was assigned to the 4th Reserve Motor Transport Company. As his unit was predominantly responsible for the transport of supplies, Ryder undertook minimal training before being sent to the front. He embarked for active service from Melbourne in April 1941. Private Ryder's unit was one of many mobilised to provide general transport for cargo and troops. On arrival in Singapore, he engaged in transport and supply operations around positions in North Malay. Across the region, Allied units were preparing for the possibility of war with Japan. This was realised in early December 1941 when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor and began landing on the northern east coast of Malay. The invasion was intended to provide the Japanese army with an overland route towards Singapore and the strategically significant Allied naval base. Positioned around North Malay, the 4th Reserve Motor Transport Company spent the weeks in a desperate struggle to move men and supplies further south as it retreated towards Singapore. By January 1942, the Japanese had achieved a series of rapid victories in the Pacific, and the Allies were being forced back as the islands around them began to fall. As they fell back towards Singapore, Ryder and his comrades were involved in the desperate fighting that took place as they fought to save the city. By the 15th of February 1942, however, the Allies were outnumbered and overwhelmed. All hope of repulsing the enemy's advance was lost, and the Allies were forced to surrender to the Japanese. With the fall of Singapore, more than 100,000 Allied troops became prisoners of war. Among them was Private Ernie Ryder. Ernie and his comrades found themselves interned at Changi, alongside thousands of other Australians. Conditions in the camp were bleak, but Japanese forces soon began sending Allied prisoners in workforces to provide labour for various projects. Selected for one of these groups, Ryder found himself among hundreds of prisoners stuffed into overcrowded railway carriages with little food or water, with many of the prisoners suffering from dysentery and tropical diseases. The train took them overland to Thailand, where Private Ryder and his comrades were put to work building a railway linking Thailand and Burma. The line was to be constructed over 420 kilometres through rugged terrain and dangerous tropical conditions. The prisoners were forced to construct the railway using nothing but hand tools, undertaking hard labour on inadequate rations and nutrition. Isolated in the jungles of Thailand, the prisoners had little access to medicine and supplies and were supervised by vicious Japanese troops who subjected them to beatings and torture. Disease and sickness was rife, and the prisoners survived on a diet comprised almost entirely of polished white rice, which contained few vitamins and little nutritional benefit. Not long into his ordeal as a prisoner of war, Private Ryder began suffering from beriberi. With no access to adequate food or medical supplies, he soon succumbed to the effects of his illness and died on the 9th of December 1943. His final resting place was uncovered after the war, and he was moved to Than Boi Yatsat War Cemetery in Burma, where he lies today below the inscription, "He returned to God who made him, but his spirit is with me always." Ernie Ryder was 24 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Ernest Victor Ryder, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.